Revenge with Karen.
I knew something was off the moment they moved my desk next to the industrial fridge that sounds like it's coughing up its own soul every 10 minutes. That's when you know you've been demoted in spirit, if not in salary, when the floor vibrations from the ice machine start dictating your meeting schedule. They didn't even bother making up a title change. One morning, I was Lee Monroe, senior service architect, quietly holding together the spine of our client ops stack. By lunch, I was advisory, which is corporate for shut up and stay seated. Enter Chad, MBA, hair gel, and all the charisma of a LinkedIn post gone viral for the wrong reasons. He swept into our org like he was auditioning for a reboot of Suits, all tight smiles and tighter KPIs. Synergy, he said during his first all hands, clapping like he was training dolphins, going to cut deadweight process and lean into our strengths. Translation, he didn't understand what half of us did, so he was going to bulldoze the whole thing and see what still twitched. In the first week, 3 of our best support engineers got reallocated. By week 2, our monitoring budgets were slashed in favor of a shiny new visualization tool that looked like a Vegas slot machine, but with less math. And by the end of the month, was showing up at client review calls with that same oily grin and buzzword shotgun, scalable alignment, optimized resilience, stakeholder intimacy. I wish I was making that last one up. My dashboard was still running. My real one. The one I'd built years ago, not the candy-coated PR nightmare Chad was now demoing to the board. Mine pulled raw SLA data straight from the ticket logs. Unfiltered, time-stamped, ugly as sin, but honest. I named it Truth Engine as a joke. No one laughed, which probably means it hit too close. Here's the thing, Chad didn't know what any of it meant. He knew optics, not outcomes. So when he found my dashboard, he didn't ask what it tracked, he asked how to make it more presentable. I should have known then, should have seen the scalpel coming. A week later, the UI was stripped out and replaced with high-gloss branding templates. Colors matched the Q3 theme. Labels were adjusted for readability. But the real crime? The metric calculations themselves had changed. I wasn't told. I just logged in one night and saw it, resolved with an SLA, 97.1% hovering like a gold star over a graveyard of half-closed tickets and retro-tagged failouts. I cross-referenced logs. The data didn't lie, Chad's team did. They were backdating tags, reclassifying client complaints, even outright deleting minor outages that hadn't made it into incident reports yet. I found commit logs in the code repository with commit messages like optimize compliance metrics and sanitize edge cases. Sanitize, like truth was a stain you could scrub out with the right marketing bleach. I sent a note to my old boss, Karen, now rotting in HR purgatory. Is anyone checking the SLA math? I asked. Reply Kim a day later, don't die on this hill. You still have a 401k match. That was her wisdom. Keep my head down. Let the train run off the cliff as long as I wasn't the one tied to the tracks. I started having dreams again, ones I hadn't had since my startup days, back when I used to care. In them, I was trying to hold up a crumbling wall with just my hands, and people were walking by, nodding politely, commenting on the new paint. Always, the wall was cracking anyway. I stopped speaking in meetings, not because I didn't have thoughts, but because it didn't matter. Chad would ask questions he didn't want answers to. Like, how do we elevate the client journey without compromising our delivery cadence? What does that even mean? You could ask a magic 8-ball and get more clarity. So I watched. I archived emails. I pulled logs, every deleted ticket, every tag timestamp, every slide Chad showed to the board, and what data it should have shown. And through it all, the fridge hummed behind me, vibrating just enough to rattle my chair, like it knew something no one else did, like it was trying to whisper, they don't see you now, but they will. It started with a smirk, that smug little crescent on Chad's face as he pulled up his new efficiency dashboard during the executive sync. The lights dimmed slightly, and suddenly there it was, my design, my layout, even my color scheme, the midnight blue header I'd agonized over for 2 days, beaming out of the projector like a stolen child dressed up for adoption. Except now, it was wrapped in sales glitter. The font was bigger. The curves were smoother, and in the top right corner, pulsing like a defibrillator trying to resuscitate our reputation, Enterprise SLA compliance 97.1%. Chad let it hang there, basking in the silence like he just pulled the sword from the stone. Big improvement from Q2, he said, and no one questioned it. Not the CFO, not the VP of sales, Not even the COO, who once made me present an entire postmortem for a 0.3% SLA dip. Now, they were nodding like bobbleheads on a dashboard headed for a cliff. But I wasn't nodding. I was counting. Not percentages, lies, because 97.1% wasn't just optimistic. It was impossible. Not with the outages we had in June. Not with the 36-hour backlog in Tier 2 when the vendor integration choked. Not when we reclassified 6 critical tickets as client-side latency to avoid breach reports. So how the hell was Chad posting that number with a straight face? When the sync ended and the suits shuffled out for their overpriced catered lunch, I stayed behind, pulled up the internal staging instance, dug into the queries under the hood, and there it was. A single new field in the ticketing schema, tag SLA override, buried in the patch notes like a piece of gum under a funeral pew. The commit message added flexibility to retro-tag historical resolutions for analytics continuity. That smiley face might as well have been a middle finger. They were rewriting history, going back into closed tickets, ones that breached SLA windows, and slapping on a magical, resolved on time label. As if time itself could be negotiated after the fact, like some kind of customer service Groundhog Day. I traced the commits. They'd been pushed by someone on Chad's new Tiger team. Some green junior dev named Max, who used to ask me questions in Slack like, what's the difference between uptime and response time? How he was writing the code that aligned our metrics with leadership's vision. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a full minute. Then I ran the logs. 743 tickets had been retagged in the last 6 weeks. Some of them were small, Tier 1 password resets or botched auto-replies, but a lot of them were heavy hitters. The kind of client issues that used to trigger escalation chains and 3 a.m. war rooms. The kind of tickets I'd once lost sleep over. Now they were being retrofitted into a fantasy. I called up the backup dump of my old dashboard, Truth Engine, the real one, the one they decommissioned because the UX looked too technical. It still pinged the raw logs, still told the truth. I ran the same query against the untouched data set, the actual SLA compliance for enterprise clients, 82.6%, not 97.1%, not even close. It wasn't a rounding error. It was a damn Ponzi scheme of metrics. For a brief, insane moment, I thought about printing both dashboards and pinning them up in the break room with a red Sharpie and the words "spot the difference." But I didn't. That's not how you win wars like this. Not with outrage. You win with proof, so I saved everything. Query diffs, API logs, timestamped commits. I created a private Git repo and dumped the receipts like I was building a case file for the FBI. I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I attended the next leadership sync, sat in the back, quiet as smoke, watched as Chad clicked through his deck again, slide 14, the one with the SLA glory graph, complete with upward arrows and animated confetti, and I smiled, because now I wasn't guessing. I knew the game had started, and Chad didn't even realize I was holding the rulebook he thought he'd shredded. I took the long way to HR, not out of fear, of calculation. Every extra step gave me time to rehearse the script in my head. Stick to facts. Stay calm. Don't make it about Chad, make it about risk, about liability, about exposure. But under it all, a different voice kept whispering, low and bitter, "This is your house. He's just squatting in it." Karen met me in one of those glass box HR conference rooms that feel like a confessional booth in a mall. She used to be my boss 6 years ago, back when the company still believed in things like engineering feedback and audit logs that didn't lie. Back when collaboration meant building something together, not smiling through a throat punch. She closed the door, gave me that tight, professional smile that women in HR learn like a second language. I dropped the file folder on the table. Inside were printouts, side-by-side screenshots of the 2 dashboards, code diffs with highlighted tag manipulations, ticket logs with before and after timestamps. No commentary, just facts. Karen flipped through the first 2 pages, then stopped. Didn't look at the rest, didn't even ask questions. Just exhaled slowly like a balloon letting out air through a pinhole. "Oh, Lee," she said, like I'd told her I adopted a raccoon, "you're not wrong. But is this really the hill you want to die on?" That was it. No shock. No concern, not even a denial. Just corporate triage. "Know what this could mean, Karen?" She nodded. "And if I were still in ops, I'd be raising hell with you. But I'm not. I'm in HR now, and I'm telling you as a friend, don't make this your crusade. They're going to frame it as a difference in interpretation. You'll be the bitter legacy dev who couldn't evolve." I just stared at her. You still have your 401k match, she added gently, like that was supposed to taste like comfort. You've got time vested. Options. Blow it up over 1/4's report. I left without taking the folder. Let her keep it. Let her lock it away in some HR drawer marked pending doom. The next few days blurred into a haze of numb productivity. I kept my head down, logged in, ran queries, wrote status updates no one read. I watched as Chad walked through the office like a man who thought he'd been crowned. One afternoon, I caught him giving a product tour to the new CFO, pointing at the dashboard and calling it our proprietary SLA tracking engine. My tracking engine, my code, my work. I went home that night and poured a whiskey I couldn't afford to need, stared at the wall for so long it blurred into nothing, and in that static silence, I ran the options through my head like a sick flowchart. Walk away, take my vesting, find another job, let the whole damn thing rot behind me. Leave the lies unpunished and try to sleep at night. Call a reporter, leak the files. Blow it open. Go full whistleblower. Enjoy my 15 minutes before getting blacklisted from every enterprise org that thinks quiet professionalism is worth more than truth. Burn it all down, drag the whole mess into the light. But then what? Court dates, SEC investigators, years of bitterness and NDA-laced silence. I thought about Chad's smile again, presentation-ready face he made when he said we were transforming customer value streams. It made my skin itch. That night, I pulled out my old hard drive, booted up the archived staging environment, opened a terminal window and typed one line, audit SLA integrity.sh run. Then I zipped the output, logged it, tucked it somewhere off-site, and closed the laptop without sending a damn thing, because I wasn't reckless. Yet, we met at the Wick, weird gastropub that smells like rosemary fries and burned ambition. It's where we used to pull all-nighters in college, back when she was cramming for the LSAT, and I was drowning in network theory. 10 years later, nothing had changed except the cost of cocktails and the way we carried exhaustion in our eyes. Clara still had that bone-dry delivery that made you feel like she was reading your autopsy before you'd even finished bleeding. She was in town for deposition, some class action thing involving a fintech startup and a $2 million accounting oversight. I figured if anyone could help me see through the legal smog, it was her. She didn't even sip her Negroni before asking, so, "You brought me here to talk about ethics, or are we burning a bridge tonight?" I slid a napkin across the table with a scribbled diagram. No names, just 2 dashboard outputs, one unaltered SLA calculation, one enhanced with retro-tagging logic. Clara read it like a bedtime story. By the time she reached the margin note, Q3 SLA compliance equals 97.1% public, 82.6% actual, her brow furrowed like a paper cut. "You're joking." "I wish." She leaned back, took a long drink, then said the phrase that cracked something inside me. "If your company filed that number in any public-facing report, anything tied to investor decision-making, and you've got logs showing manipulation, that's not just internal misconduct, that's securities fraud." She said it so flatly, like she just diagnosed a terminal condition I didn't know I had. And if your C-suite knows it's wrong, that's intent, which means liability, fines, maybe prison time, depending on scope. I stared at the condensation dripping down my glass. "Do you know," she added, "how many firms would kill to have the proof before the feds come knocking? Forget ethics, this is exposure control. The longer they let the lie stand, the more expensive it becomes to pretend they didn't know." I think that's when it shifted. I came into that bar carrying a grievance, a betrayal, a stolen product, a hijacked number, but I left knowing I was standing on the edge of a crime scene, and the fingerprints were everywhere. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights, just sat down and opened my backup terminal. Everything I'd saved before, the ticket diffs, the override tags, the manipulated queries, it wasn't just damning anymore. It was evidence, so I got serious. I pulled every Git log on the dashboard repo, exported each commit where the SLA logic changed. I downloaded read-only database snapshots and dumped the response time deltas. Every ticket ID, every time someone touched it. I cross-referenced tags with timestamp edits and user IDs, and I didn't stop there. I backed it all up twice, once to a cold drive, once to an encrypted cloud vault Clara had once told me about during a late-night vodka-fueled rant about whistleblower lawsuits. I didn't ask questions, just followed the setup instructions. Every file got a timestamp. Every screenshot got a SHA-256 hash. No redactions, No edits. The raw, cut story of what Chad and his spin factory were doing. And the whole time, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I realized halfway through my fourth audit trail that I hadn't even put on music. I was operating in that silent, surgical headspace where anger becomes precision. This wasn't about getting even. This wasn't about proving I was right. This was about truth. Documented, immutable, admissible. And once you start documenting truth at that level, something changes in your bones. You stop being the victim. You become the historian. And the reckoning isn't a question of if anymore. It's just a matter of when. The email came at 6:04 a.m. Subject line, restructuring update access realignment. Sent by someone named Maya I'd never met from an inbox labeled People Ops. That's always how they do it. No confrontation, no signature. Just a digital guillotine dropped before sunrise. Effective immediately, your administrative permissions have been adjusted to reflect recent org restructuring. Please reach out to your functional lead if you have any questions. I didn't have questions. I had backups. 3 weeks before that email, I had already started building my shadow dashboard. Quietly, in the margins of the workday. A mirrored instance of the original SLA pipeline, read-only, locked down, logged with redundancy across 3 cloud buckets and a local cold store. No one noticed, because no one was watching. Chad's team had been too busy polishing the optics. The new dashboard was getting presented on every call now, from the CEO's town hall to client renewals. 97.1% SLA compliance, they'd say, like it was tattooed onto the company's DNA. They even started calling it the Phoenix platform, as if data integrity could be reborn from fraud if you slapped enough branding on it. I named mine Basilisk. It didn't shimmer. It didn't animate. It didn't need buzzwords or a pitch deck. It just pulled the raw logs, incident durations, resolution timestamps, failure counts. Every ticket entered through the system passed through my mirror. And unlike Chad's monstrosity, mine remembered everything. When they cut my access, I didn't flinch. I already had what I needed, anticipated it. Hell, I counted on it. Because people like Chad don't see you as dangerous until you stop speaking. Until your badge still beeps at the door, but your Slack status says away, and your browser tabs aren't about product reviews anymore. They're about SEC Regulation 10b-5 and whistleblower protection statutes. What I didn't expect was how aggressively they'd ramp things up after locking me out. Investor materials started leaking internally. Chad's voice all over them, calls with PE firms, board member pitches. Our customer-facing SLA is exceeding historical benchmarks, he said on one call I wasn't supposed to hear. But the transcript made it to me anyway. We've built an auditable compliance backbone. That one almost made me laugh. Auditable. The man was standing on a pile of kindling and calling it fireproof. He even trotted out our biggest enterprise client, Parallax Systems, during a webinar, quoted them completely out of context, said their Q3 renewal was a vote of confidence in our operational maturity. They renewed because we gave them a 23% discount and threw in on-call support for free. Chad didn't mention that. The thing that really got me, though, the thing that twisted the knife, was when he renamed the core reporting engine. My engine. It was now called Vanta Ops trademark. There was even a little trademark symbol next to it on the deck. Like Betrayal had a brand now. But Basilisk kept running. Every API hit, every edited tag, every silent override. And every week I pulled down a fresh bundle, labeled it, encrypted it, stored it away. Meanwhile, Chad was booking meetings with VC firms, touting the dashboard as a cornerstone of our compliance-ready data environment. He was so far up his own myth, he didn't even realize I was feeding the truth into a time capsule, one zip file at a time. I wasn't locked out, I was off the radar. And the longer I stayed there, the clearer it became, this wasn't the end of the story. This was the loading screen. The message was simple. No greeting, no signature, no flourish. Just 13 words. You may want to review the Q3 SLA cert filed with the SEC VS. What's on the public dashboard? I sent it through a burner Proton Mail account at 3:22 a.m., routed through 2 VPNs and a Tor bridge. The recipient, legal at company.com, attention flagged for general counsel. I knew the inbox. I helped draft the SOP for incident disclosures 2 years ago. By 8:07 a.m., I saw the first ripple. An unannounced security audit ticket hit the internal changelog. Tagged as QA compliance, review tier 0 data. Nothing name, but I recognized the hands behind it. Legal Ops had activated a silent crawl protocol, one designed to validate claims without tipping off the product org. I built that protocol with my old team. We called it Ghost Scrape. It was running. The basilisk had spoken, and the echo had reached the top. They didn't know who I was, yet, but the shape of the truth was surfacing, like a bruise rising beneath corporate makeup. I kept a low profile, logged into my cold terminal once a day, pulled the latest batch of logs, watched the tags shift in real time as Chad's machine kept rewriting reality. And then, out of nowhere, I got a Slack ping. Not on my account. On my old iPad, still logged in under a sandbox user from a testing project. I hadn't touched it in weeks, but the message blinked in like a ghost. Max DevOps build cap, hey, don't reply. Just wanted you to know they're finalizing the town hall deck. 97.1% is slide 4. Chad's calling it the turnaround quarter, and he's quoting your name on it, based on systems originally built by Lee Monroe. I stared at the screen. He was putting my name under his lie, dragging my work into the con like it gave the fraud credibility. That was the moment I felt it click, not rage, not panic. Just a cold, clinical resolve. This wasn't just misrepresentation anymore. This was weaponized attribution. They were laundering the data through my credibility. I opened the last audit bundle, cross-checked it against the Q3 SLA certification filed with the SEC. The number on record, 97.1%, signed digitally by the CTO, co-signed by legal. Certification of accuracy under Regulation FD. And I had 6 weeks of logs proving they'd cooked the data. I cross-referenced commit logs again, the override system, the tag SLA override patch, the user IDs tied to the edit sessions. Even Max's commits were there, likely under orders. I wanted to warn him, but I didn't. No heroes, not yet. This had to unfold the right way. No finger-pointing, no grand exposé. Just the cold slap of legal consequence hitting a smirking man on a live feed. I started building a brief, just internal. A timeline, pull quotes, logs, and visualizations. A side-by-side of the real SLA curve vs. the inflated one. At the top of the file, I wrote a title, Delta of Integrity, Q3 SLA Manipulation and Risk Exposure. It wasn't for public release. Not yet, but someone in legal was already tugging at the thread. And when that deck went live, with my name under his lie, I knew the unraveling would begin. Because every fraud needs a story. But truth just waits for an audience. I wore gray. Nothing that stood out, nothing that whispered rebellion. Just an old blazer, a coffee-stained notebook, and a badge that still beeped because no one remembered to revoke physical access when they cut your systems. The town hall was standing room only, but I was in the third row, center aisle. Close enough to see the pixels on the slides, far enough to look forgettable. The auditorium lights dimmed. Someone from PR whispered something into their headset mic. Chad stepped onstage to applause that felt just a beat too rehearsed. He was wearing his power blue shirt, sleeves rolled, no tie, pretending to be one of us while standing 3 feet higher. Behind him, the opening slide read, Q3 Recap, Productivity, Synergy, and Scale. Of course it did. He opened with a joke about our new ping-pong table and a quick nod to our brilliant engineering team, never named, never credited, just a faceless mass of productivity. Then he eased into the numbers. Our operational transformation over the last quarter has been nothing short of phenomenal, Chad said, smiling like a TED Talk version of himself. We've streamlined delivery, reduced churn by 8%, and most importantly, he clicked the remote. Slide 4. SLA compliance, 97.1%, a big green arrow pointed up. Beneath it, smaller font, as tracked through Vanta Ops trademark, built on legacy systems developed by Lee Monroe. That was the moment. Not when the number hit, not when he said my name. It was when the general counsel, 3 rows behind him, hands folded, face neutral, tilted her head just slightly. Not surprise, not concern, recognition, because she had read the anonymous tip. She'd seen the discrepancy. And now, in front of employees, shareholders, live-streamed board members, the number was up there like gospel. And he'd invoked my name like a talisman of legitimacy. I raised my hand, not fast, not dramatic, just like we used to do in sprint reviews back when questions still mattered. Chad spotted me, nodded like he was handing me a sticker for good behavior. Yes, Lee, go ahead. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I just asked one sentence. Was our final SLA for enterprise clients in Q3? The room didn't react at first. Too smooth, too soft. But Chad blinked just once. His smile froze, not gone, just held in place like a mask mid-crack. Well, he started. As you can see, no, I interrupted gently. I'm not asking about what's on the slide. I'm asking what number was certified in the SLA logs, filed under Regulation FD, with time-stamped resolution metrics and full audit trail. Someone in the back dropped a pen. Chad opened his mouth again. And that's when the general counsel lifted her hand, not to wave, not to interrupt. Just slowly, deliberately held it up. Don't say anything, she mouthed. Chad glanced back, confused, maybe annoyed, but she didn't blink. Just kept her hand in the air like she was pressing an invisible brake pedal. The silence that followed didn't feel awkward, felt surgical, and I knew why, because behind that polite gesture was panic. That question I asked wasn't rhetorical, it wasn't hypothetical, it was a precision strike. Anyone in legal who'd read the audit knew what it meant, that the number on the screen and the number in the certification didn't match, that the commit logs existed, that the retro tagging was traceable. I sat back in my seat, didn't smirk, didn't gloat. The live stream was still rolling. The slide hadn't changed, and Chad was just standing there, caught between the myth he built and the reality crashing in behind him like a dam breaking. And all I had done was ask a question. That's the thing about traps. You don't need to shout when you spring them. You just need to make sure the cameras are rolling when the silence lands. Chad's mouth opened like he was about to pivot into some improv theater of plausible deniability. You could see the wheels turning behind his eyes, how to spin, how to dodge, how to charm his way through a data breach disguised as efficiency. But the general counsel's hand didn't waver. Palm up, flat, a wall in the air. She mouthed it again, slower this time. Don't say anything, Chad hesitated. His jaw slackened just enough for the smile to slide off. His clicker hand twitched. The slide with the 97.1% was still up, bright and massive behind him. My name still glowed on the lower third like a credit in a movie I'd never auditioned for. And then it happened. The GC's phone vibrated. Once, she didn't move right away, just stared down at the screen like it had sent her a death notice. Then, with deliberate control, she tapped it open. Her eyes scanned the message. One line, two, then a pause, a long one. I watched her go still, like a machine locking into standby. That's when I knew the report had landed. The audit team, running silent since the tip, had finished their scrape. Cross-referenced dashboard outputs against raw ticket logs. Confirmed the retroactive SLA tagging, the false resolutions, the misaligned timestamps, all of it, and the number, not 97.1%, not even close. The GC stood up, slowly, smoothing her skirt with one hand, still holding the phone in the other. She didn't look at Chad. She looked at the screen. Then at the audience. Without saying a word, she walked out. No drama, no panic, just precision, like a surgeon leaving a room after declaring time of death. The silence she left behind was suffocating. Chad stood frozen. He tried to laugh, some weak chuckle, some half-baked attempt at levity. Well, he said, voice cracking at the edges, that's one way to start Q4, huh? No one laughed. The room was dead quiet. Even the tech guy by the camera feed stopped fidgeting. I looked around, saw the faces. The CTO, suddenly interested in the floor tiles. The VP of product, lips pressed white. Karen from HR had gone completely pale, blinking like a deer about to confess to every minor sin she ever committed. They weren't confused, they were terrified, because this wasn't just a number anymore. It was a time bomb with legal ink on it. And for the first time in months, hell, maybe years, no one was interrupting me. No one was brushing me off, or suggesting we circle back, or parking the conversation for Q4 alignment. I wasn't an afterthought. I wasn't invisible. I was the epicenter, not because I shouted, but because I whispered at the right frequency and the whole system started to vibrate. I didn't say anything else. Just folded my notebook closed, set it on my lap, and waited, because the match had already been lit. And all that was left was to watch what burned. Building always looked different in the morning, less arrogant somehow. Strip away the LED wall, the exposed beams, the lobby espresso bar, and it was just drywall and fear holding hands. I walked in through the front like I still belonged, because in that moment I did. The receptionist gave me a look, not hostile, not warm, just careful. Everyone was careful now. By the time I made it upstairs, the news had already devoured the org chart. Chad wasn't in his office. His nameplate was gone, just a smudge on the frosted glass. His parking spot, VIP 3, sat empty under a whisper of red leaves. Word was the board called an emergency meeting less than 8 hours after the town hall ended. The general counsel presented the audit report without a single word of commentary, just opened the PDF, scrolled to the delta chart, and let the numbers talk. Chad was suspended before the meeting was over. His laptop locked, badge deactivated, pending investigation, they said, but no one used that phrase without already knowing how the movie ended. The next morning, the SEC got pinged by our own legal team, voluntarily, preemptively, like they were trying to get ahead of a flood they knew was coming. The GC's move, surgical, cold, necessary. The CTO tried to claim ignorance. The VP of product suddenly remembered every Slack thread she ignored. Even HR had to dig up archive tickets just to prove they weren't complicit. And through all that, my name never left anyone's mouth. Not in blame, not in praise. Just this new, hushed neutrality like I was a weather event. Not good or bad, just inevitable. Around noon, the interim director, someone from finance, a man whose handshake felt like dry paper, asked if I'd be willing to consult on the compliance remediation strategy. I'm not coming back, I said. We know this would be advisory. Temporary. I bill hourly now, I said. Then named a number that would have gotten me laughed out of the room 3 months ago. He didn't even blink, just nodded and asked when I could start. I told him I'd send my availability later. Then I packed a small box, just the things I cared about. A framed post-it from a departed teammate, my lucky pen, potted snake plant that somehow survived both office moves and a quarter without watering. No farewell speech, no staged photos, no Slack status change. I walked out through the side entrance, box in hand, the sun on my face. Didn't look back. That night, I poured a whiskey and opened my inbox. There it was. A single screenshot forwarded from Max. No caption, no commentary, just an internal dashboard preview. No branding, no gradients, no animated confetti. Just black text on a white background. Lee metrics unedited, and beneath it, Q3 SLA compliance, 82.6%. That was it. No press release. No corporate spin. Just the number standing on its own, not sanitized, not glossed, just real. Quiet vindication doesn't come with applause. It doesn't need it. It comes with the knowledge that the truth outlived the lie. And that, finally, I named the storm. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.